Now, if you're a regular viewer of our channel, you'll know that most of our videos are about popular cars that sell in big numbers, but we actually test all makes and models, from the slowest and the cheapest things on four wheels that don't technically class as cars at all, right the way up to the fastest and most expensive stuff, like this Ferrari 296 GTB. In this video, I'm going to be driving it silently here in town, not silently on a track, and we're also going to be doing the sensible stuff like checking out the infotainment system and finding out how practical the boot is. So stay with us, and remember, for a great discount on your next new car, as long as it's not one of these, of course, just head to whatcar.com. So where does the 296 GTB slot into Ferrari's road car lineup? Well, it's an indirect replacement for the F8 Tributo. Indirect because the way the 296 is powered is very different, and I'll explain why shortly. Ferrari classes this as a sports car. The supercar billing is reserved for its most exotic stuff like the LaFerrari, the Enzo and F40. However, to the rest of the world, who consider something like a Porsche Cayman a sports car, the 296 is very much a supercar. It sits below the SF90 and above the slightly more relaxed Portofino and Roma GT cars. Now, if you're a Formula One fan, you'll know that the latest cars have hybrid V6 turbocharged engines. And guess what? So does this. So it has a 3-litre petrol engine that sits in the middle of the car here, and on its own, that produces 654 brake horsepower. So that's way more than the 6-cylinder engine in a Porsche 911 Turbo, for example. But there's more, because this car also has a 164 brake horsepower electric motor. So altogether, it can produce almost 820 brake horsepower, and it's all fed to these rear wheels here, unlike in the more expensive SF90, which has 4-wheel drive. This isn't any old hybrid either, it's a plug-in hybrid, and that means that you can plug the car in and charge up a 7.5 kilowatt-hour battery. If you do this and the battery is full, then the car will tell you it can do up to 15 miles of pure electric driving. You won't actually get quite that far in the real world, but around 10 miles should be possible if you take it easy. And that means officially just 149 grams of CO2 comes out of this big oval tailpipe every kilometre, and the 296 can do 44 miles to the gallon. That is complete nonsense, of course, and it's because of the unrepresentative way that official tests are carried out. But let's be honest, if you can afford one of these, you're probably not going to be too worried about fuel economy. Now, the downside of plug-in hybrids is that they tend to be quite heavy, because they not only have a petrol engine, but they also have an electric motor and a battery to carry around. This car weighs just under 1.5 tons dry. That means without fluids or people inside it, which is more than a Lamborghini Huracan, but not by a huge amount. Now, we don't have time to run you through all of the optional extras fitted to this particular test car, but believe it or not, there are 120,000 pounds of them. Here are the highlights. The most expensive option is the Fiorano Performance Pack. It costs around £28,000, and as well as some aerodynamic upgrades to the car, it also gets you a polycarbonate rather than glass engine cover, some carbon fibre door cards, and some upgraded track-focused Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2R tyres, although this particular car has Michelin Pilot Sport 4S rubber. You also get uprated suspension, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. These blue stripes cost more than 15k, and you can only add them if you've gone for the Fiorano pack. They might look like stickers, but they are in fact painted on, and they're designed to pay homage to the 250 LM Le Mans winning racing car from the 1960s. Except not many people will know that, and they're slightly the wrong shade of blue anyway. So there is a danger that people will think you've just stuck baby blue stickers all over your brand new Ferrari. These forged diamond 20-inch alloys cost £5,000, and if you want them painted the same colour as the body stripes, you'll be spending an extra £3,600. And if you want these Scuderia rear shields on the wings, you'll pay £1,100. Another option is these carbon fibre bucket seats. They cost £6,200, and if you want these 4-point racing harnesses as well, that'll be an extra £2,800. To be honest though, I really wouldn't bother. This is a road car after all, and yes, you might take it on track once or twice, but a normal belt will be absolutely fine for that. And the rest of the time, they're just a bit of a faff to harness yourself in and out, even if you're just popping to the shops. They're also quite heavy, so they hang on your shoulders annoyingly after an hour or so behind the wheel. And as is the whole point of a harness, you're strapped right back in your seat. So if I want to reach the glove box there, or even just look around that B-pillar there while I'm driving along, I can't do that very easily at all. So let's get these off. They aren't half as annoying though as all of these touch sensitive controls. So you've got them here for the air conditioning, here for the mirrors. If I want to move the mirrors, I first have to select which one I want and then stroke this direction pad very gently to move the mirror into position. Now I can forgive that because unless you're letting someone else drive your Ferrari every day, you're only going to be doing that once or twice. But every time you drive the car, you are going to be using this touch sensitive steering wheel. You'll find the start stop button on it down here and also the infotainment controls. So for the infotainment, you have to use this direction pad here and again, so stroke your thumb down it very gently to move around the on-screen menus. It's very fiddly and distracting to do while you're driving. It isn't good for usability. If it were, then Ferrari would have touch-sensitive controls all over the steering wheel on its Formula 1 cars, and it doesn't. You do at least have proper physical controls for the indicators though, so they are buttons here, not stalks like you get on most cars, but they're very easy to reach with your thumbs. There is also the Manettino switch down here, you'll find that in all Ferraris, and you can twist that to adjust the traction control, depending on the weather, the road you're driving on, and just how brave you're feeling as well. The steering wheel also has the headlight controls and the wiper controls on, although if you want to flash someone, then you need to pull a paddle behind the wheel here, and likewise, if you want to just give the windscreen a quick wipe, there's a corresponding pad on the other side of the steering wheel. Fiddly interface aside though, this is an absolutely brilliant driving position. The location of the pedals, the steering wheel, are absolutely perfect, and these seats hold you in place really well too. I would prefer a slightly more upright backrest. You can't adjust that with these carbon buckets, but otherwise absolutely spot on. This car also has lots of optional carbon fibre on the interior, including up here on the instrument panel. But one thing you don't have to pay extra for, perhaps surprisingly, is this touchscreen on the passenger side of the car. So if you don't want to risk crashing by fiddling around with all these touchpads on the steering wheel, you can just delegate the job to your passenger. Right, pretty as the 296 is to look at when it's parked up, it's designed to be driven, so I think it's about time we did just that. Doesn't sound very Ferrari, does it? No noise at all. Could be a Nissan Leaf. Now we're starting off in town because have a guess where the Ferrari capital of the UK is. That's right, it's London. Well, we're not in London now, but we're pretty close to it, so I'm just driving down Cobham High Street in Surrey. Loads of expensive cars around here, Range Rovers, Porsches, but nothing that's getting close to the amount of attention of this thing. And let's be honest, you don't buy a Ferrari, especially not a Rosso red one with baby blue stripes on it, if you don't want to get noticed. And even though I'm running in EV mode at the moment, so it's not making any noise at all, it is proving quite an attraction. Now, admittedly, that might be because people are expecting to look inside and see Raheem Sterling behind the wheel rather than some poor motoring journalist. But if you're still not happy that you're causing quite enough drama, you can solve that problem by pressing a touchpad down here, and that fires into life the V6 engine with an angry bark. You can hear that there. So even if people have managed to miss the bright red and blue streak that's going past them, they definitely won't be able to miss that noise. If you're in EV or hybrid mode, the latter uses electric power most of the time at low speeds, as long as there's charge in the battery, then this is a remarkably easy car to drive in town as well. So there's a creep function, you just lift off the brake and the car edges forward. And even when you do need to use the accelerator pedal, it's very smooth, very predictable. And the brakes, they're carbon ceramic as standard, they're not grabby at all either. Even visibility is pretty good. You sit quite high up by sports car standards, got a good view down those wings. And that means that, unlike some supercars, this isn't at all intimidating to thread down a narrow side street past parked cars. You really could drive it every day. Now, Ferraris are about much more than going quickly in a straight line, of course, but there is a claim of 0 to 62 in 2.9 seconds for this car. So the first thing I think we should do is put that to the test. Right, so very easy to engage launch control. You just switch to race mode. Then you press this little button down here, launch control enabled, foot down on the accelerator all the way down, release the brake, and whoa. This thing, 0 to 60, 2.8. So it is, and it's actually spitting slightly now, so traction not ideal. And of course, remember, this car doesn't have the Cup 2R tyres that you get as standard on the Ferrari pack. It's been de-specced to be on Pilot Sport 4S's, which in ideal conditions, certainly when it's dry and there's enough heat in them, should develop even more traction. So this thing is astonishingly fast. And yes, we're going to get some comments below to say that actually a Tesla Model S Plaid is even faster, and yes it is, but in this car, because you're sitting so low to the ground and because there's so much noise, you've obviously got that V6 engine blaring away right behind your head. It feels faster, it feels far more involving, far more exciting. On the subject of the engine, it sounds absolutely fantastic. Ferrari actually calls it a Piccolo V12 or Little V12, and there are times that you could be fooled into thinking that it has 12 cylinders. It's turbocharged, but there's no lag at all, because any delay between you pressing the accelerator and the car surging forward is filled by the torque from the electric motor. Gearbox at lower speeds, it slurs through the changes a little bit actually, but when you're properly on it at high revs, it punches through the shifts. But the real genius of this car is how well it hides its weight. As I said earlier, it's not especially light by petrol supercar standards, but it is astonishingly agile. And I know some people find the steering in Ferraris a little bit too quick, a little bit hyperactive, off-centre, but I actually really like it. In a car with more body roll, with a slightly vaguer front end, it wouldn't work, but because this car is so responsive, it's absolutely perfect. Not a huge amount of natural feel, but the important thing is that you trust the car. You always know where it is. It's actually been raining slightly. This expansion joint concrete surface is very slippery.
12 seconds later.
And just as I said that, the heavens have opened, so it is absolutely pouring down now. Track is soaking wet. And I'll tell you, in a lot of supercars, you'd be a little bit nervous now. You'd be on tiptoes around here. And of course, I'm not going as quickly as I was, but I'm getting reasonably close to the limit. And still, this car feels friendly, approachable. It doesn't feel like I'm suddenly going to be put sideways into one of those bushes over there. And that is a remarkable piece of engineering, to allow this car to be approachable, to be friendly, even when it's driven in anger, without losing any of that interactivity, that involvement, which makes a car like this so enjoyable to drive hard, to take onto a track like this. But here are 5 more things you'll want to know about the 296 GTB. There's only one boot, it's in the nose here, but it's bigger than you might imagine. You can fit a couple of these carry-on suitcases in it. The asking price is just over £250,000, and that's before options, of course. This particular car would cost you around 370k. If it's any consolation at all, you get 7 years worth of free servicing and a 4-year warranty as standard. That can be extended for a 5th year for around £4,000 extra, which seems like a no-brainer given the likely repair bills if anything major goes wrong. The 296 GTB can generate huge amounts of rear downforce, up to 360 kilos at 155 miles an hour, assuming you spec the Ferrari package. That's thanks in part to an active rear spoiler. And if you prefer your Ferraris topless, there's a folding hardtop version of this car called the 296 GTS. The 296 GTB is a very complex car, but it isn't at all complicated to drive, and that's what makes it so special. Ferrari has managed to seamlessly blend all the advantages of electrification with none of the drawbacks we've seen on many other plug-in hybrid performance cars. It's a genius piece of engineering and proves there really is nothing to fear from an electrified future. But for lots more information about the 296 GTB, just head over to our website, whatcar.com, where you'll find our detailed written review. You can actually shortcut straight to that if you want by clicking the link up there at the top. If you've got any other comments about the 296, leave them below. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for lots more videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.